This is Cyprus. It is an island nation in the eastern Mediterranean Sea with an open, free market, service-based economy with some light manufacturing. Internationally, Cyprus promotes its geographical location as a bridge between East and West, along with its English-speaking population, moderate local costs, and good airline connections. COVID arrived on Cypriot shores on 9th March 2020. In the first few months, Cyprus kept the pandemic relatively in check by imposing travel restrictions, closing schools, hotels, and businesses, and making masks mandatory in public spaces. But as recovery started, a second wave came, then a third, and a fourth. To keep the economy up and running, the Cypriot government introduced fiscal and monetary policies. On the fiscal side, Cyprus has introduced an €800 million economic support package for the health sector, households, and businesses. The package includes, firstly, a €40 million support for the health sector to combat the pandemic, easing the impact of COVID on all fronts, bringing aggregate demand and aggregate supply back up as consumption and production increase. Secondly, income support for households serving to increase the disposable income of consumers, increasing AD through increasing consumption. Thirdly, wage subsidy and grants for affected businesses, maintaining production and boosting recovery. On the monetary side, the Central Bank of Cyprus, the CBC, hopes to increase money supply and lower interest rates during the pandemic so that investment is increased as well as consumption. The policies are, firstly, directly increasing money supply for banks and making loans easier for all to get. Second, imposing a moratorium on loan repayments for all credit-worthy borrowers until June 2021, maintaining the money supply. Thirdly, releasing additional funds of approximately €90 million, which again increase money supply. As Cyprus is also a member of the European Union, it also receives funding from other EU countries, either used to increase its money supply or used as government expenditure for fiscal policies.
Now, we will be moving on to a country closer to home, Japan.
あそこウイルスだおいおいまた新しいのが入ってきたっぽいぞ
Japan announced its first emergency response package on February 13, 2020. The package included the provision of 1.8 billion yen to reinforce international cooperation. On 10 March, the second COVID-19 emergency response package was announced and was mainly aimed at mitigating domestic difficulties. One of the policies also included funds for external assistance. The third package was announced on 7 April. In the package, the government expanded employment adjustment subsidies to prevent retrenchment. In this case, when labour demand shift left due to the economic downturn, with the help of government subsidy and taking account the stickiness of wages, demand curve will shift right and reduce the unemployment. The total amount spent on all these budgets was equivalent to 55.1% of the country's GDP in 2019.
I'm getting rich tonight. RIP that economy.
They have helped business to stay afloat, supported households and preserving employment. Moreover, with the fiscal stimulus boosting household balance sheet, disposable income increases, encouraging consumption. This will help sustain the circular flow of income in the economy. For monetary policy, the Bank of Japan has implemented expansionary monetary policy since March. Specifically, it has implemented new fund provisions to the financing of small and medium-sized firms by providing funds at loan rate of 0% to counterparties against collateral. This keeps firms in business for longer and allows them to maintain their physical capital. It also prevents them from losing large sunk costs and allows their capital to continue functioning at the optimal output. By introducing these policies, the bank increases money supply and decreases interest rate. By doing so, it encourages more investment from firms, hence increasing the aggregate expenditure in the country. The money supply curve then shifts right, i.e. it curves shift up. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the Singapore government has rolled out 4 budgets: Unity, Resilience, Solidarity and Fortitude to support firms, workers and households. For fiscal policies to support household income are implemented in all 3 countries to increase the country's welfare. Doing so will also generate higher multiplier effects, as lower income households have higher marginal propensity to consume in the long run. It may drain the government budget just to boost the aggregate expenditure. For workers and employers, policies that are similar to job support scheme in Singapore have rolled out in Cyprus and Japan to provide wage subsidies. Again, long term, such policies might not be needed due to the high opportunity cost when life reverts back to normal. Still, this is one of the most valuable factors that boosts aggregate supply instead of aggregate demand, which means that it will be a good foundation for long-run progression and development. For Japan's policy to spend 15.5 billion yen to international organizations and Japanese residents, it might not be ideal for Singapore, as the number of Singaporean immigrants is considerably insignificant in the long term. Moreover, since Singapore's multiplier has already been low due to high imports and high savings, spending money abroad might be wasteful during pandemic.
Next, for monetary policy, Cyprus has been releasing funds to increase money supply, which is something Singapore has also been doing. COVID-19 has triggered a liquidity-driven market. Hence, by increasing liquidity to all banks, Singapore can continue loaning out SGD through its daily money market operations. Nevertheless, in the long term, it will drain the reserves, and since GDP is fixed in the long run, any increase in the money supply only causes prices to inflate. Finally, Japan has given low-interest loans for both large companies and SMEs. In the case of Singapore, if we support our large companies, they can produce more as they are able to reap economies of scale. Considering the Keynesian multiplier effect, if the money was given to large firms, the spending multiplier would be higher. Hence, in the long term, it will show stability and support of Singapore's markets and attract more firms to join the market. However, it might lead to large amounts of debt if all companies loan and fail to produce enough returns. In conclusion, measures that are implemented are unique to their own country's situation during an economic downturn. While fiscal policy may indeed be effective at stimulating output during a deep recession in some countries, increase in government spending will crowd out private economic activity, while a monetary approach may boost inflation. What works for others may not work for us. The Singaporean government has taken all these and a lot more into consideration and implemented policies tailored specifically to our economy to help our economy recover as fast as possible.